Imagine if, like a star quarterback threw 5 interceptions right before the Super Bowl. And I mean, on purpose, just to make the inevitable fourth quarter comeback look more dramatic.
Right, which would be totally insane.
Exactly. I mean, in real unscripted sports, you'd call that match fixing. And, well, people would literally go to prison for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in the world of WWE, sacrificing your biggest star just to set up a larger narrative down the road isn't scandal. It's just, incredibly good business.
Yeah, it's kind of the whole point.
Right. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are jumping into the intricate storytelling engine of WWE, focusing entirely on the explosive fallout from the 2026 Night of Champions in Riyadh and the chaotic road heading into this year's SummerSlam.
And we are pulling from a massive stack of sources for you today. We've gone through the official WWE event recaps, read through some really analytical breakdowns from Sportskeeda.
Yeah, those are great.
They really were. We've also analyzed the freshly released SummerSlam betting odds and scrutinized the recent Raw results out of London. Our goal here is to deconstruct exactly how WWE uses these massive tournaments, deeply personal betrayals, and, in-ring psychology to build these huge, blockbuster summer narratives.
It's honestly like a massive serialized game of chess, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the pieces are actual athletes. And sometimes you just have to sacrifice a queen to win the long game.
That is a perfect way to look at it.
Yeah. So to really understand the current landscape, we have to establish that the 2026 King and Queen of the Ring tournaments just wrapped up. That basically sets the foundation for the entire summer of WWE programming. But we need to start with the centerpiece of Night of Champions.
Right, the Queen of the Ring final.
Exactly. You have Iyo Sky going up against the reigning women's world champion, Liv Morgan. But I have to bring up what happened before the bell even rang, because it perfectly illustrates just the absurdity and really the brilliance of this world.
Oh, it was bizarre. I mean, even by professional wrestling standards, it was weird. You have this massive stadium-level event in Riyadh. The stakes, honestly, couldn't be higher. And out onto the stage comes Danhausen.
Right, this theatrical, completely comedic character.
Yeah, and he's out there demanding what he calls human monies from the Judgment Day faction.
And Liv Morgan, who is the reigning champion, actually confronts him. She walks up and just slaps him across the face.
Which was a choice.
Right. And in response, Danhausen officially curses her right there on the stage. Now, if you're listening to this and trying to view it through the lens of pure sports psychology, this is where I kind of have a hard time buying in.
Okay, how so?
Well, put yourself in the shoes of a star athlete in the locker room right before Game 7. You have your headphones on. You're laser focused. Why on earth would a reigning elite champion let a bizarre comedic distraction rattle her right before stepping into the ring for a major final?
That is the million-dollar question right there. And it gets right to the core of Liv Morgan's current character arc. She hasn't just survived as champion. I mean, she has thrived on being this incredibly confident, opportunistic force.
Sure, but confidence isn't the same as letting yourself get distracted.
Exactly. There's a very thin line between confidence and absolute arrogance. In a legitimate competitive mindset, you put your blinders on, you ignore the noise in the arena. Liv, however, actively chose to engage.
So she wanted to assert dominance over every single element of the show, not just the woman she was about to wrestle.
Precisely. It's totally an ego play. By slapping Danhausen, she allowed an unpredictable external variable to break her focus. Whether you believe in a literal curse or not is totally irrelevant.
The psychological seed of doubt was planted.
Yes, she expended vital emotional energy on a ghost just moments before stepping into the ring with Iyo Sky, who, by the way, happens to be one of the most dangerous, technically proficient strikers on the entire roster.
Oh, and Iyo made her pay for that lack of focus immediately. I mean, the physical storytelling inside the ropes was phenomenal.
It really was.
You had Liv aggressively targeting Iyo's knee from the opening bell. There's this brutal spot early on where Liv actually pushes Iyo off the top rope, and Iyo just crashes directly onto the solid steel ring steps, knee first.
Which is such a fundamentally sound strategy if you want to ground a high flyer.
Right, because Iyo Sky's entire offensive arsenal relies on her aerial ability.
Exactly. She needs a solid base to jump from. If you systematically destroy the knee of an acrobat, you don't just hurt them, you strip away their identity as a wrestler. You turn a bird into a sitting target.
Yeah, and Liv was surgical about it. She locks in a half crab right in the middle of the ring, just bending that knee backward, gets a backstabber. She even hits the three amigos.
It's a classic trio of consecutive suplexes.
Right, putting all the impact onto Iyo's lower body. She is just systematically dismantling her. But Iyo's resilience was terrifying.
She fought through so much visible agony.
She really did. She hits a meteora, which is where she essentially jumps and drives both of her knees directly into Liv's face. Then she follows it up with a springboard Asai moonsault, flipping backward off the ropes all the way down to the floor, landing on that bad leg.
I mean, that's just the adrenaline masking the pain, right? It allows her to hit these total desperation moves.
And then comes the finish. On a practically destroyed leg, Iyo manages to hit a stunning top rope Spanish fly, which is this highly complex twisting slam from the highest turnbuckle.
Incredible balance.
And she immediately drags herself back up, hits her signature over the moonsault, and pins the champion to win the crown. The post-match visual was incredible.
Oh, when Nick Aldis handed her the crown.
Yes, she's overcome with emotion. But she instantly points a finger directly at Liv Morgan and just says, "I'll see you at SummerSlam."
That one gesture fundamentally shifts the entire balance of power in the women's division. You have this phenomenal piece of physical endurance that seamlessly transitions the audience right into the next major narrative chapter.
Okay, let's unpack this. I agree the physical match mechanics were fantastic. But I want to pull back the curtain for a second because the underlying booking decision here is fascinating to me.
The decision to have Liv lose.
Right. Why did the writers decide that their reigning women's world champion should lose without any outside interference? A clean loss, right in the middle of the ring, in a tournament that doesn't even have her championship on the line.
It does seem counterintuitive at first glance.
Yeah, because if I compare this to traditional sports, it feels like a Super Bowl winning team going out and getting absolutely blown out in a high-stakes exhibition game right before the regular season starts. Doesn't a high-profile, clean loss subtly damage a champion's credibility in the eyes of the paying audience?
No, it's a totally natural concern. I mean, if a champion loses constantly, the belt loses its value. But if we look at how the current creative regime operates under Triple H, this specific loss actually achieves the exact opposite.
Really? How so?
Sportskeeda put out a brilliant piece of analysis breaking down 3 core reasons for this specific booking decision. And honestly, I think it perfectly illustrates the modern blueprint for WWE storytelling.
Okay, let's hear the breakdown. I want to see if the logic actually holds up.
Okay, so the first reason is simply about career trajectory. Iyo SKY needed the victory significantly more than Liv did.
That makes sense. She's been grinding.
Right. Iyo has been one of the most consistent, high-level performers in the company for years, but she needed a definitive moment to solidify her as a premier, undeniable single star. Winning the Queen of the Ring validates her hard work to the audience. It gives her a tangible accolade that forces the fans to take her seriously as a permanent main eventer.
Okay, I buy that. Elevating new talent is crucial. But Sportskeeda's second point was that Liv didn't need the win, right? I mean, doesn't every competitor want another trophy on their resume?
In a legitimate athletic contest, yes, of course, you want every trophy available. But in a scripted narrative, currency just works differently. Liv Morgan is already the women's world champion. She's standing at the very top of the mountain.
So the tournament doesn't do anything for her.
Exactly. Historically, tournaments like King and Queen of the Ring are utilized specifically as a vehicle to elevate a superstar who is on the precipice of the main event scene. It gives them that final push over the edge. Handing Liv another piece of hardware wouldn't actually elevate her status any further in the eyes of the fans.
Right, because the heavy gold belt around her waist already proves she's a top star.
Precisely. She didn't need the crown.
That brings us to the third reason, which honestly feels like the real anchor for the whole summer.
Yes, the long-term emotional payoff. This decision manufactures a blockbuster, emotionally layered storyline for SummerSlam. Think about the alternative. If Liv had won the tournament, her next title defense at SummerSlam would just be another standard match on the card against a new challenger.
But by having her lose clean to Iyo, the entire dynamic is inverted.
Exactly. You essentially have a champion who is suddenly desperate. Liv now has to avenge a massive, humiliating loss on a major global stage. Her pride is completely wounded.
While Iyo enters SummerSlam with maximum psychological momentum.
Right, knowing she has already beaten the champion once, it creates a level of psychological intrigue and vulnerability you just cannot get from a standard #1 contenders match.
It really anchors all those acrobatics in real human desperation. So the Queen of the Ring clearly established that emotional foundation for the women's division. But when we shift gears and look at the King of the Ring tournament, and especially these newly released betting odds for SummerSlam, we really start to see where the company's ultimate confidence lies.
Oh, the betting odds are always a fascinating metric for professional wrestling because they don't just measure what the fans want to happen, they measure the perceived narrative trajectory.
The odds makers are essentially trying to read the minds of the script writers.
Exactly, and the smart money usually follows.
And some of these lines are just wild. Let's look at the BetOnline SummerSlam odds. We just talked about Obafemi defeating Jey Uso to win the 2026 King of the Ring as a massive career moment for him. But before we get to his match, let's look at the women's title.
Yeah, this one is interesting.
Despite taking that clean loss at Night of Champions, Liv Morgan is actually favored to retain her title against Iyo Sky at SummerSlam. She is sitting at -220. Which is an implied probability of about 66.7%.
And that number tells you everything you need to know about the overarching story. The odds makers firmly believe the Night of Champions loss was a necessary structural setback in Liv's longer story, not the end of her reign.
Right. They expect her character to learn from the distraction, overcome the adversity, and actually win when the championship is on the line.
Exactly. Then you look at the World Heavyweight Championship odds. Roman Reigns is a massive -500 favorite to retain his title against Seth Rollins.
That's an 83.3% probability. It's the classic dominant champion betting line. But then, there is the most shocking line on this entire sheet, and I am still trying to wrap my head around it.
You're talking about the Hell in a Cell match.
I am. Obafemi is an unprecedented -3,000 favorite to defeat Brock Lesnar inside Hell in a Cell.
-3,000. It's staggering.
That translates to a 96.8% probability. Now, if you are listening to this and you follow traditional combat sports, you know a -3,000 line is borderline insane.
Oh, yeah. You only see those odds if a heavyweight champion is fighting an amateur.
Right. So I have to play devil's advocate here. A newly crowned king, who is still relatively fresh to the main event scene, is a -3,000 favorite against Brock Lesnar. Brock is arguably the most dominant, terrifying force in WWE history, and they are fighting inside a steel cage. How can odds makers predict a scripted match with 96% certainty against the ultimate final boss?
I know it sounds counterintuitive, but you have to look at the mechanics of how WWE historically builds its legendary monsters. A -3,000 betting line isn't just saying Obafemi is likely to win a wrestling match.
What is it saying then?
It is saying that the odds makers recognize WWE is completely committed to strapping a rocket to this guy's career. Brock Lesnar isn't just a wrestler. As you said, he is the ultimate final boss. He's the measuring stick for sheer dominance.
Yeah, he ended The Undertaker's undefeated streak at WrestleMania. He is mythical.
Exactly. So if the writers put a newly minted king into a Hell in a Cell match with Lesnar, they absolutely aren't doing it just to have the new guy get beaten up and lose. The odds makers recognize that WWE is utilizing Lesnar's historic credibility to permanently cement Obafemi as an unstoppable force for the next generation.
Wow.
The odds are that extreme because the narrative purpose behind booking the match is just so incredibly transparent.
Okay, when you put it like that, it makes perfect, ruthless sense. You don't feed the new king to the beast unless you want a dead king. You put them in the cell together so the king can slay the beast and literally take his aura.
It is a creative investment in the next decade of television. You sacrifice the past to secure the future.
Which brings us to a really crucial aspect of all this. These massive premium live event matches, the SummerSlams, the Nights of Champions, they don't just materialize out of thin air.
No, not at all.
The emotional investment that justifies a -3,000 betting line is meticulously, painstakingly constructed during the chaotic weekly TV broadcasts. If you want fans to buy a pay-per-view in August, you have to hook them on a random Monday night in June.
And the June 22nd episode of Raw in London was a master exhibit in episodic storytelling.
Oh, totally. That London crowd witnessed an incredibly chaotic show.
The writers managed to balance high-stakes championship title changes with deeply uncomfortable interpersonal drama.
Let's break down the physical betrayals first. We saw Paige and Brie Bella defeat Lyra Valkyria and Bayley to retain the WWE Women's Tag Team titles, but the actual story happened after the final bell.
Right, when Bayley tried to comfort Lyra.
Yeah. Bayley, being the good sport, goes over to help her partner Lyra up for a hug, and out of nowhere, Lyra completely snaps.
Yeah.
She violently attacks Bayley, executing a shocking heel turn, meaning she suddenly became the villain of the story.
It was brutal.
And the fascinating part was later, backstage, Jackie Redmond tries to get a journalistic interview with Lyra to ask why she did it. And Lyra just glares at her, refuses to explain her actions, and storms off in total silence.
You know, silence can be the most deafening promo a wrestler can cut.
Really? Just by not speaking?
Absolutely. By refusing to give a monologue explaining her actions, it leaves the audience desperate for answers. It ensures that the viewer who watched her attack Bayley absolutely has to tune in next Monday to find out the why behind the violence.
That's a great point. But then you contrast that sudden physical violence with what happened with Chad Gable later in the night. This was pure soap opera emotional devastation.
Oh, this segment was heartbreaking.
It really was. Gable brings his former faction, Alpha Academy Otis, Akira Tozawa, and Maxine Dupree down to the ring.
Yeah.
He sincerely, tearfully apologizes for his past toxic behavior and manipulation.
And it genuinely looked like Otis was going to accept the apology and forgive him.
Right. The crowd was ready for the reunion. But Maxine steps in, looks Gable in the eye, entirely rejects the apology, and tells him they don't need him anymore. The three of them walk out, leaving Gable absolutely brokenhearted and alone in the middle of the ring.
It is a devastating television segment because it is entirely grounded in reality. Everyone watching has experienced something akin to that.
That is exactly what I was thinking. If I look at these two moments side by side, the soap opera emotional rejection of Chad Gable and the physical, violent betrayal of Bayley by Lyra Valkyria, I have to ask, why are these deeply personal, interpersonal character dramas just as vital to keeping the audience hooked as the shiny championship belts themselves?
Because championships represent professional athletic goals, but betrayals represent human reality. A wrestling show is, at its core, an action drama. The athletic feats, the moonsaults, the power bombs, those get you out of your seat. But the emotional stakes are what keep you coming back year after year.
That makes total sense.
We have all felt the sting of a close friend turning their back on us. We have all seen an apology get thrown back in someone's face. When you take these larger-than-life, spandex-wearing superheroes and ground them in deeply human emotional trauma, the audience instinctively projects their own life experiences onto the characters.
Wow. Yeah.
Gable, standing alone in that ring, rejected by his chosen family, builds far more sympathy and long-term viewer investment than if he had simply lost a 15-minute wrestling match.
It forces the audience to care about the human being, not just the athlete. And, well, speaking of the athletic side, we can't ignore the pure chaos that erupted in the tag team title picture on that same Raw episode.
The Street Profits match.
Yes, the Street Profits won the World Tag Team Championships, defeating Austin Theory and Braun Breaker. But they did not do it cleanly.
Far from it.
The match was an absolute car crash of outside interference featuring Seth Rollins, Logan Paul, and Joe Hendry. It was glorious madness.
And that madness serves multiple structural purposes. Obviously, it gets the championship belts onto the Street Profits, which was the immediate goal. But by having Seth Rollins and Logan Paul interfere, it intricately weaves multiple separate overarching storylines into the fabric of the tag team division.
Right. It makes the entire roster feel like a living, breathing, interconnected universe where anyone's actions can impact anyone else's match.
Exactly.
And we absolutely cannot talk about a living, breathing, chaotic universe without bringing up the strangest element of all right now.
Danhausen struck again on Raw. I honestly had to rewind the tape when I watched this because I couldn't believe they actually did it on live television.
He is certainly leaving a very specific mark on this summer's programming.
He curses JD McDonough after JD and Dominic confront him about the human monies he's been demanding. JD arrogantly claims that he can't be cursed, tries to steal Danhausen's property, and legitimately gets electrocuted on screen. Yeah, a full electrical shock.
He takes a massive shock and just collapses. It is absolute peak pro wrestling absurdity.
It is absurd, but, it functions perfectly within the pacing of the broadcast.
Really, a cartoonish electrocution.
Absolutely. It injects a necessary dose of levity and physical comedy to balance out the intense emotional trauma of the Chad Gable rejection and the Bayley betrayal we just talked about. You desperately need that tonal variety to keep an audience engaged for a 3-hour live broadcast. If everything is emotionally heavy, the viewer just gets exhausted.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It really highlights how WWE's storytelling ecosystem thrives on this incredibly precise, delicate balance. You have these massive, prestigious tournaments like the King and Queen of the Ring
Yeah.
that serve a mechanical purpose, systematically resetting the roster hierarchies and elevating brand new stars like Obafemi and Iyo SKY.
Right. The structure.
Then, your weekly television provides the visceral emotional hooks, the quiet betrayals, the rejected apologies, the bizarre comedy curses things that make us actually care about the people fighting in those tournaments.
And ultimately, those betting odds we examine reflect the fans' complete buy-in to all that narrative momentum. It's a closed loop of cause and effect. The writers plant the emotional seeds, the wrestlers execute the physical toll, and the fans invest their time and money in the payoff.
Exactly. And this connects directly back to you, listening right now. Whether you are analyzing business trends, following traditional sports, or even working in creative writing, managing long-term engagement is entirely about pacing.
It's all about the pacing.
It is about knowing exactly when to give your protagonist a major, painful setback. You have to let Liv Morgan lose her crown. You have to let Chad Gable lose his found family, because that pain makes the ultimate climax down the road that much more satisfying. Sometimes you just have to sacrifice a queen to win the game.
That underlying tension is what creates true loyalty. I mean, a hero who never struggles, who never faces self-doubt, is a hero that nobody actually cares about.
Which brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with today, building on the source material we've just unpacked. Think about Danhausen's curse on Liv Morgan right before her match with Iyo SKY.
Right, the distraction.
In the highly physical, hyper-athletic world of WWE, where matches are ultimately decided by top-rope Spanish flies and brutal steel cages, is it possible that the most powerful storytelling device isn't a finishing move or even a championship belt?
Oh, wow.
Is it possible that the strongest weapon is just the psychological seed of doubt? Could a silly theatrical curse actually be the perfect narrative tool to make an otherwise invincible champion mentally defeat themselves before the bell even rings?
That is a brilliant colon to consider.
It really makes you wonder what the most dangerous weapons actually are in this universe. Something for you to mull over until our next deep dive.